compare your population baseline to the variable you chose. In my case, my variable was GDP. So I wanted to go to the sheet where I was comparing population and GDP. And I'm going to paste. Remember to right click and paste special though. When in doubt, make sure to right click and paste special. And again, those number signs that we all love so much. And there we go. Okay, so this graph here was comparing population on the x-axis and GDP on the y-axis. And I have this equation. This is all stuff that you guys should have already done before. So this part, this graph is not new. It's should be already something you had to create previously. Okay, so I have this equation with an x and a y. Now in this case, my x represents population because that's what's on the x-axis here. And my y-axis is GDP, so that's what y represents. So we're going to use that equation to predict for GDP. So below my linear population prediction, I'm going to type GDP prediction. Maybe let's just type linear before it, just so we remember. Okay, so this equation here has that capital E that we all know and love. So I'm going to double click on it, double click on that box, and go to scientific and change it to 15. If you don't do this, your answers are definitely going to be weird and not right. Okay, so I'm going to go over here, click in my cell below population. I'm going to hit equals. And now I'm going to look at my first number in my equation. It's 2.1872, blah, 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 blah. And then the capital E, negative 0.6 this time. Before it was plus 0.7 or whatever, plus 10. Now it's negative 0.6. That means we have to move the decimal 6 to the left. So I'm just going to start right away with a decimal point, and if I move the decimal that's after the 2, if I move that 6 to the left, I'm going to have 5 zeros in front of the 2. So I know that it's a decimal point and then 5 zeros and then the rest of my numbers. Okay, now the next thing is the x, and it's that number times x. So I need to make sure to put an asterisk, and you can also watch what I'm doing in this formula bar up here. You can see I put an asterisk after, which means multiply, and then I want to click not in the year cell this time, but the population, because our input this time is population. And then the next thing in my equation is a plus sign. And then it's 8.1019 blah, 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 plus capital E plus O2. So that means I move the decimal 2 to the right. So it would be 810. And then I put my decimal and type the rest of the numbers. Okay. Looks like I'm good, so I hit enter. Then I want to go down here to the cell and click and drag it across. Ooh. Okie dokie. Now we're to the last step. This was GDP predictions that I just did. So this is telling me over time what's going to happen with the GDP per capita. Okay? So what I want to do now is go to my global GDP per capita slide. And I want to copy the years. So I'm going to hit Command-C and copy the years and go to my global GDP per capita. So you want to go to your global variable slide. You can see this is a slide where all my Gapminder data is for GDP. That's the slide you want to be on, whether it's broadband users, HIV, people with HIV, whatever your variable is, okay? So I'm going to hit Command V and paste those years. And above this, I'm just going to type forecasting so we know. And now I want to copy my GDP predictions to this sheet. So I'm going to hit Command C. And remember, right click, paste special because it was a formula, and paste the values. Okay. Looks good. So what I want to do is I want to combine my new predictions with my old data that I got from Gapminder. So what I'm going to do is go to the top of this sheet and copy the years now from the top of the sheet. These were the years that Gapminder had data for, and I'm going to copy those and I'm going to bring them down here. And then I want to copy this total. This is the total GDP over time. I want to copy that below the years. Remember, right click, paste special because these were formulas. Okay? And last thing I want to do is add my new data. So I'm just going to highlight just my data, my new predictions, and I'm going to copy and paste these to the end, at the end of my old data, where my old data ends. So I'm going to hit Command C. You could also cut it if you wanted. Go up to the top and click the scissors and cut. That would be okay too. So now scroll to the end where your data stops. Remember, mine stopped, well, this one stopped in 2010. That's okay. Hit Command V. We don't have to do paste special this time, actually. So there's a gap between where this data ended and my new data started. That's okay. All right, so you can see to the left is my old stuff from Gapminder. To the right are my new predictions, all right? And the last thing we have to do is just highlight these two rows. And I always do a smooth line scatter. I think that's just the best one to choose. So I go up to Charts, Smooth Line Scatter, and there's my new chart. Just going to fix it up a bit here. Type years on the x-axis. This is GDP in US dollars on the y. And I will say global GDP projections over time. And once you're done, this is the last step you had to do. So you can see from 1800 up is the old data, and then where it becomes a perfect straight line were my new projections. Looks pretty reasonable to me. Now, one thing we talked about is how there's this gap between where it starts and the beginning of the chart. So I'm going to right click, go to Format Axis, go to Scale, change my minimum to 1800 because that's where my data started in. Just makes it look a little better. You can also delete this if you want to, or leave it. It's fine.